Welcome to the 700 Club. After U.S. soldier Taylor Force was killed by a terrorist in Israel, his parents began a campaign to end the Palestinian government's policy known as pay to slay. They thought they won a major victory in 2018 when the Taylor Force Act became law.
Stuart and Robbie Force recently discovered their work isn't finished. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us more on their latest fight.
Stuart and Robbie Force are back on Capitol Hill, working to pass legislation that goes further than the Taylor Force Act. They want to close a loophole allowing banks to make payments to terrorists.
We've recently come to the realization that the job is half done. And the truth is the payments have continued, and those responsible have not been held accountable.
After serving tours in both Afghanistan and Iraq, Force's son Taylor was stabbed to death by a Palestinian terrorist in 2016.
The family of the Hamas terrorist who murdered Taylor, celebrated as a hero by Hamas, has been receiving martyr payments as a reward for his despicable act.
The new legislation targets banks in the Middle East that continue to process martyr payments.
The Taylor Force Martyr Payment Prevention Act would give the Treasury Department the ability to designate these banks as institutions of primary money laundering concern and forbid them from using correspondent accounts in the United States.
Currently, the banks avoid sanctions by not keeping an official presence in the United States.
To those banks playing this game, your time is up.
Senator Lindsey Graham is confident the bill will pass, although Senator Mike Braun tells CBN News he's not so sure.
Sadly, it would take some type of miracle to get that across the finish line, but what it does give any of us is the ability to use the microphone to talk about it, because many people probably don't even realize that is happening.
While introduced by more than a dozen GOP senators, Braun believes it could be a slow process moving through the Senate, and he's not sure it can pass the House right now. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
This absolutely needs to pass. We need to have the ability to stop this kind of terrorist funding. In all the discussion of boycott, divestment, sanction, this is always left out. The Palestinian Authority pays for terrorism. They reward the families of terrorists with monthly payments. Those payments are absolutely tied to the severity of the crime. So in other words, the more Jews you kill, the more Israelis you kill, the bigger your payment. It is absolutely despicable. The Trump administration tried to shut this thing down. In 2018, the Taylor Force Act was passed. U.S. funds are not allowed to go to these payments, and that's one of the just horrors of it, that U.S. taxpayers were funding this. And so the funding to the Palestinian Authority was, you can't make these payments and expect the U.S. taxpayer to come in and support your budget. You can't expect UNRWA to come in and support your budget. And so the Trump administration moved very strongly to shut it all down. In the face of all that, the Palestinian Authority doubled down. They said, we're going to continue the payments. So now what can we do? Well, we can go after the banks that facilitate those payments. I can't believe the current administration wants to resume payments to the Palestinian Authority, wants to resume payments to UNRWA, wants to resume literally funding these terrorist acts. We have to stop it. Please encourage your congressman, your senator to pass this bill. Let's get some real teeth into it so we can stop the terrorism that is ongoing in Israel. In other news, the remaining 12 missionary hostages who were abducted in Haiti are now free. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The release of the captives comes after 2 months of negotiating and uncertainty. CBN's Brady Carter brings us the story and a look at just how dangerous the situation still is in Haiti.
We glorify God for answered prayer. The remaining 12 hostages are free. Join us in praising God that all 17 of our loved ones are now safe.
Thursday's release of the remaining hostages with Christian Aid Ministries comes 2 months to the day of their abduction. It began when members of the notorious Haitian street gang 400 Mawazo kidnapped the 17 missionaries as they traveled to an orphanage. Among those abducted were 5 children, including an 8-month-old and their Haitian driver. Last month, the gang members released 2 hostages and 3 more in early December, all without incident. No details on whether any ransom has been paid.
This was the same gang that kidnapped 2 of our individuals who work with us.
Dr. David Vanderpool is no stranger to violence in Haiti. He left his medical practice in 2010 to serve there for 11 years. He fled Haiti just weeks ago due to growing civil and political unrest.
In 2018, our base manager was murdered by this gang on our front gate steps, and so in front of his wife and child. So in 2015, my wife, they attempted to kidnap my wife. She was cut with a machete, beaten with a pistol.
Since the collapse of Haiti's government, Vanderpool says gangs run roughly 60% of the country, and kidnappings are up 300%. Americans are the main target. Gangs demand hefty ransoms to fuel their violence.
They control all the fuel into the country. They control the ports.
The U.S. State Department ranks Haiti as one of the world's most dangerous countries, putting it on the same level as North Korea and Afghanistan.
That should be a clue for people that they shouldn't go there.
The doctor is now using his time to push Congress and the Haiti caucus to intervene there before the problem spreads.
Otherwise, this is going to become a Somalia in our own backyard. And that should really get people worried, because Haiti's very close to the United States.
Outside of voicemail updates, Christian Aid Ministries has not made any comment on the kidnapping or release of their missionaries. It remains unclear what led to their freedom. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Their return certainly seen as an answer to prayer. Thank you, Brody. Well, here at home, abortion pills will now be available by mail. The Food and Drug Administration has permanently eliminated a long-standing requirement that the pills had to be picked up in person. Agency officials said a scientific review supported broadening access to the medication. The decision is certain to lead to legal challenges and more restrictions in Republican-led states. The FDA had already stopped enforcing the in-person requirement earlier this year because of the pandemic. Well, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommending that most Americans should be given the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines instead of the Johnson & Johnson shot because it can cause rare but serious blood clots. More than 200 million Americans are fully vaccinated. Out of about 16 million who have gotten the J&J shot, the clotting issue resulted in 9 confirmed deaths. Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines don't come with that risk.
It's very clear that the mRNA vaccines are just slightly more effective and slightly more safe.
The CDC made the decision after new data from safety tracking of vaccinations persuaded the panel. While the blood clots linked to J&J's vaccine remain very rare, they're still occurring, and not just in younger women as originally thought. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is asking the Supreme Court to block orders from multiple lower courts that are preventing the president's vaccine mandates for healthcare workers from going into effect in about half of the states. The move comes as the military is taking action against personnel for refusing to be vaccinated. The Marine Corps has fired 103 Marines, and the Army pulled 6 leaders out of the service. The Air Force said earlier this week that 27 airmen had been discharged for refusing the vaccine order. The Navy has fired 1 sailor from his command job for refusing to be tested while he pursues an exemption. It is unclear how many eventually could be discharged from the services. Well, turning now to the tornado disaster in Kentucky, where rebuilding efforts are likely to last for months. More bad weather is slowing the recovery efforts, and CBN's Operation Blessing is in the region helping people recover from the historic tragedy. Charlene Aaron has the story.
The tornado outbreak last weekend was the worst in a decade, leaving Kentucky with a long road to recovery. And still more storms struck again the last few days. The deadly weather bringing dangerous tornadoes, rare for December, to the Midwest and Plains, killing 5 and leaving a path of destruction across the region, and more than 400,000 power outages. Those storms came as many people are still working on disaster relief after that series of deadly tornadoes last weekend. At least 90 people were killed across 5 states, 75 in Kentucky, 6 in Illinois, 4 in Tennessee, 2 in Arkansas, and 2 in Missouri. Victims ranged in ages from 2 months old to 98. This woman's 3-year-old son was killed when their home collapsed on top of them. She had been holding on to him and her 1-year-old as they took refuge in the bathroom.
I had them both in my arms. I didn't let them go. That's how we were found.
Kentucky, the hardest hit state, has a long road of recovery ahead.
The devastation is still, I don't know if the right word is profound, traumatic, painful. You know, we here in Kentucky have felt the love and support of the entire country and of the entire world.
There's a ton of work that needs to be done. I've been doing this for 14 years all over the country, and it's hard to get much worse than this.
It's a little unsettling, to be honest, because it's everywhere you look. Where this tornado went through, it did catastrophic damage.
CBN's Operation Blessing is in Kentucky and Tennessee, providing much needed aid and support, working with church partners to deliver food, water, and other necessities.
They'll be receiving those supplies of food, Home Depot buckets that are filled with cleaning supplies and other things that will assist the people of this community to begin the process of recovery.
Operation Blessing teams are preparing to stay for the long haul as residents work to rebuild their communities and their lives.
And it's our plan over the next weeks to continue to search for those who may have been forgotten, may have been overlooked, so that they don't feel like they're unimportant.
With the devastation so widespread, Operation Blessing is working to bring more help to the region in the days ahead. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Gordon, what you kept hearing in that story was that these people who've been affected by that tornado are going to need help for quite some time.
It's going to be a long road of recovery, and Operation Blessing is being very intentional. We're trying to target the underserved communities, the ones that don't have yet major relief efforts. And it's amazing, right here in the United States of America, people are without food and without water in these devastated areas. No power, you know, how do you get through the winter months? All of these things are just crushing down upon them, and we want to be there for them in their time of need. If you want to be part of the help, if you want to be part of the solution here, just say, I want to give. I want to be a part of it. There's a lot of different ways. You can write to us, Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put disaster relief on the memo line or the check. You can text us. We now have a text to give, OBDR to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com. On the giving page, there's a place where you can designate your gift to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief. Whichever way, be a part of it. Be a part of helping people in need. Do it right now. 1-800-700-7000.